You don't belong in this family. The words, sharp as broken glass, sliced through the quiet luxury of the penthouse. Amelia Holt, radiant in a silk gown, her face twisted in rage, aimed a shaking finger at the black woman before her. Ava Monroe didn't back down. She just looked straight at Amelia, her eyes holding a deep sorrow and a strength that Amelia could never understand. Understand your position, Amelia snarled, making no effort to hide her disgust. You're a temporary fix, a placeholder. Don't ever fool yourself into thinking you're anything else. Behind the marble counter, just as he was reaching for a glass of water, Caleb Hart went completely still. He had overheard the conversation that would change everything. Those words weren't just cruel, they were the key that blew open the door on the lies he had been blindly accepting. He thought he was building the perfect family for his son, Lucas, but he had just realized that he was only paying for a charade, and he was the one who would bring down the curtain. Right now, the stage is set for a storm, so wherever you're tuning in from, whether it's during your morning commute or late at night in the comfort of your home, get ready. Before we see exactly how Caleb acts, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss a single moment of the fallout. And let us know in the comments. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you anticipating his next move? The chandeliers of the Manhattan auction house glittered like captured stars, casting prisms across the crowd of tuxedoed men and gowned women sipping champagne. The air buzzed with wealth, ambition, and the soft clink of glasses, but Caleb Hart felt only the weight of absence. His fingers tightened around the bidding paddle, eyes fixed on the painting before him, a swirl of midnight blues and golds, a canvas his late wife, Sarah, had loved. A pianist whose music once filled their home, she'd called it a sky that sings. Now Caleb, a tech investor whose fortune could buy half the room, hoped this painting might ease the silence that had settled over his 6-year-old son, Lucas, since her death. Lucas stood beside him, small hands clutching a worn sketchbook, his shoulders hunched as if shielding himself from the crowd's chatter. Caleb glanced down, expecting a spark of recognition at the painting, but Lucas's face was a mask of stillness, his eyes distant. Selective mutism, the doctors called it, a refusal to speak since Sarah's death, as if words were too heavy for his heart. Caleb's chest tightened. He'd built an empire predicting tech trends, but he couldn't predict his son's pain. Lot 47, Celestial Waltz, the auctioneer's voice boomed. Starting at $2 million. Caleb raised his paddle, each bid a silent plea to bring Sarah's memory back for Lucas. The numbers climbed. 3,000,004, his jaw set as a rival bidder, a silver-haired mogul, countered with a smirk. Caleb's paddle shot up again. He'd pay anything to see Lucas smile. Across the room, Amelia Holt, Caleb's fiancée, glided through the crowd, her smile a polished weapon. An art dealer whose family name teetered on the edge of ruin, she saw the auction as a stage to cement their status. She adjusted her pearl necklace, her eyes scanning the elite guests, ensuring their whispers were of admiration. But when she glanced at Lucas, her smile faltered. The boy stood rigid, his sketchbook pressed to his chest, oblivious to the gala's glamour. "Lucas," she whispered, leaning close, her voice sharp as cut glass, "stand up straight. People are watching." Lucas flinched, his small frame shrinking further. He stepped back, his sneakers scuffing the marble floor, and retreated to a shadowed corner near a velvet curtain. His fingers gnarled the sketchbook's edges, his breathing uneven. Amelia's lips pressed into a thin line, her hand twitching as if to pull him back, but a guest's greeting distracted her. She turned away, her laugh crystalline, masking her irritation. In that same corner, Ava Monroe, a volunteer art therapist, paused mid-step, her clipboard forgotten. She'd been guiding children through art activities for the charity, her movements calm and deliberate, her silver bracelet catching the light as she worked. She noticed Lucas immediately, his trembling hands, the way his eyes darted like a trapped bird's. Without a word, she knelt beside him, her presence quiet but steady, and opened her own sketchbook. Her pencil moved swiftly, sketching a small bird, wings folded, perched beneath a scattering of stars. She tilted the page toward Lucas, her eyes gentle, inviting. Lucas froze, his gaze flicking to the drawing. The bird's fragile form mirrored his own, the stars a faint echo of the stories his mother once told him. He clutched his sketchbook tighter, then slowly reached for a pencil from his pocket. With a hesitant hand, he added a cage around the bird, its bars uneven but deliberate. His fingers shook, but his eyes met Ava's, a spark of connection flaring where silence had reigned. Caleb, turning from the auctioneer's gavel as he won the painting at 6 million, caught the scene. His breath hitched. Lucas, who hadn't spoken or engaged with anyone in months, was drawing, his small hand guided by this stranger's quiet presence. Ava offered Lucas her pencil, and he took it, adding a single star outside the cage. Caleb's throat tightened. He'd spent millions to buy a memory, but this woman with a simple sketch had reached his son's heart. Amelia, catching Caleb's gaze, followed it to the corner. Her smile stiffened as she saw Lucas hunched over the sketchbook with Ava, their heads bent close. She excused herself from a cluster of investors, her heels clicking as she approached. "Caleb," she said, her voice smooth but edged. "The painting's yours. Shall we celebrate?" Her eyes flicked to Ava, then back, a silent question in her tightened jaw. Caleb nodded absently, his focus still on Lucas. "In a moment," he murmured, stepping toward his son. Ava stood, brushing her hands on her skirt, and offered a small nod. "He's expressing something important," she said softly, her voice steady but warm. "Sometimes a drawing says what words can't." Lucas looked up, his pencil pausing, and for a fleeting moment, his eyes held a flicker of trust. As the crowd applauded the next lot, Caleb felt the room's opulence fade. The painting, now his, hung heavy in his mind. Not a victory, but a reminder of what he'd failed to give Lucas. A way to grieve, a way to heal. Ava's sketchbook, open to the caged bird under its starry sky, seemed to hold more truth than the canvas he'd just bought. Amelia's hand rested on his arm, her grip firm, but Caleb's thoughts were elsewhere. He needed to know more about this woman who saw his son's pain so clearly. The penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing Manhattan's glittering skyline. Yet Caleb Hart felt trapped in a silence louder than the city below. Days after the auction, the memory of Lucas's trembling hand sketching a caged bird under Ava Monroe's starry sky haunted him. His son, 6 years old and wordless since Sarah's death, had found a spark with a stranger when Caleb's millions had failed. The painting he'd won, Celestial Waltz, now hung in the living room, its blues and golds mocking his inability to reach Lucas. Determined to bridge that gap, Caleb had invited Ava to their home, offering her a role as Lucas's emotional development advisor. Her quiet nod of acceptance lingered in his mind, a promise he hoped would break the silence. In the penthouse's sunlit study, Ava set up a light-up glass table, its soft glow casting a warm halo across the room. Lucas sat across from her, his sketchbook tucked against his chest, fingers gnarling its edges. Ava moved with calm precision, arranging colorful glass shards, smooth for safety, on the table. "Let's make a sky together," she said softly, her voice a steady anchor. She placed a cobalt shard, its edges catching the light like a star. Lucas hesitated, his eyes flicking to the painting on the wall, then back to the table. Slowly he reached for a golden shard, placing it beside hers, his small hand deliberate but unsure. The table glowed, transforming their fragments into a patchwork of constellations, a silent story of loss and longing. Caleb watched from the doorway, his coffee cup forgotten in his hand. Lucas, who flinched at touch and shunned words, was creating something with Ava, his movements careful but alive. The sight stirred a pang in Caleb's chest. He'd spent months hiring therapists and buying toys, yet this simple act of arranging glass felt like the first real step toward his son. Ava glanced up, her silver bracelet glinting as she adjusted a shard. "He's telling us about his mom," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Each piece is a memory he's holding on to." Lucas added a jagged red shard, its shape uneven, like a wound. Caleb's throat tightened, recognizing Sarah's favorite color in the glass. The moment was shattered as Amelia Holt swept into the room, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood. Her smile was polished, but her eyes narrowed as they landed on the glowing table. "This is creative," she said, her voice clipped. "But is it effective? Lucas needs structure, not crafts." She adjusted her pearl necklace, A gesture Caleb knew signaled her unease. "Ava, I'd like daily reports on his progress," she added, her tone carrying the weight of an order. "We need to ensure his development aligns with our expectations." Lucas's hand froze mid-reach, the shard in his fingers trembling. Ava met Amelia's gaze, her expression calm but unyielding. "Lucas is expressing himself," she said, placing another shard to complete a star. "Forcing words too soon could push him further away." Lucas resumed placing his piece, his eyes fixed on the table, as if Ava's voice shielded him from Amelia's scrutiny. Caleb shifted, uneasy at the tension. Amelia's demand for reports felt less like care and more like control, but he pushed the thought aside, chalking it up to her concern for Lucas's future. That evening, David Hale arrived, his briefcase in hand, his smile calculated. Amelia's brother, a lawyer with a knack for bending conversations, clapped Caleb on the shoulder, suggesting drinks to discuss family matters. Over whiskey in the penthouse's sleek bar, David's tone turned advisory. "Ava's approach is novel," he said, swirling his glass, "but focusing on grief might anchor Lucas to the past. You're building a legacy for him, Caleb, a world of opportunity. Shouldn't his guide understand that world?" His words landed like a subtle jab, sowing doubt in Caleb's mind. Was Ava's art therapy helping Lucas heal, or holding him back from the future Caleb envisioned? As David left, Caleb returned to the study, finding Lucas alone, clutching his sketchbook. The glass table was dark, Ava gone for the day. Lucas had drawn Ava's starry bird again, but now the cage had a gap, a single star shining through. Caleb knelt beside him, his hand hovering, unsure how to bridge the gap words couldn't fill. "Buddy," he said softly, "what's this star mean?" Lucas's eyes flicked up, then down, his pencil tracing the gap wider. Caleb's heart sank. He wanted to understand, but the language of his son's grief felt foreign. Later, in the quiet of his bedroom, Caleb stared at celestial waltz on the wall, its starry swirls echoing Lucas's drawing. He'd hired Ava to help his son, but Amelia's demands and David's warnings gnawed at him. Was he trusting the right person to guide Lucas? The glass table's glow lingered in his mind, a beacon of hope against the silence. Yet as he glanced at Lucas's sketchbook, left open on the couch, the starry bird with its broken cage seemed to ask a question he wasn't ready to answer. What did Lucas need more? His father's wealth, or someone who saw his stars? The penthouse hummed with the quiet tension of a home divided, its sleek surfaces reflecting the glow of Ava Monroe's glass table, where Lucas had begun to weave his grief into starry patterns. Caleb Hart stood in the living room, staring at the celestial waltz painting, its swirls a painful reminder of his failure to reach his 6-year-old son. Ava's art therapy sessions had brought a flicker of life to Lucas, his small hands arranging glass shards with a focus Caleb hadn't seen in months. Yet Amelia Holt's sharp demand for daily reports and David Hale's veiled warnings about Ava's influence gnawed at him, sowing doubt where hope had begun to take root. The starry bird in Lucas's sketchbook, its cage cracked open, lingered in Caleb's mind, a fragile sign of progress overshadowed by the strain in his household. Amelia's latest move came without warning. A towering oil portrait appeared in the living room overnight, its gilded frame dominating the space. It depicted her and Caleb, their poses stiffly regal, a vision of the perfect family she intended to project. She adjusted her pearl necklace as she unveiled it, her smile practiced but sharp. "For Lucas," she said, her voice carrying a calculated warmth, "a reminder of our future together." Caleb nodded, but his gut twisted. The portrait felt like a claim staked, not a gift, its polished surface clashing with the raw honesty of Lucas's glass stars. 2 mornings later, a piercing cry shattered the penthouse's calm. Caleb rushed from his office to find Amelia standing before the portrait, her hand pressed to her mouth. A jagged scratch ran across her painted face, its edges cruel and deliberate. Nearby, a handful of Lucas's glass shards lay scattered on the floor, their colors glinting accusingly in the morning light. Lucas stood frozen in the doorway, his sketchbook clutched to his chest, eyes wide with fear. "What have you done?" Amelia's voice trembled, not with anger, but with a theatrical dismay that made Caleb's skin prickle. She turned to him, her eyes flicking briefly to Ava, who had just entered, her silver bracelet catching the light as she paused. "I thought the portrait would help him feel secure," Amelia said, her tone heavy with implication. "But perhaps it's made someone uncomfortable." Ava knelt beside Lucas, her movements steady, ignoring Amelia's pointed glance. "Sometimes kids act out when they're trying to say something," she said softly, her voice a quiet counterpoint to Amelia's accusation. She pointed to Lucas's sketchbook, where a new drawing lay open, a single star, its edges broken, surrounded by jagged lines like shattered glass. "Lucas, is this about the portrait?" she asked, her hand resting lightly near his. Lucas's fingers tightened on the book, his eyes darting to the floor, but he gave a small nod, his breathing uneven. Caleb's chest tightened. His son's silence was louder than any confession. "Lucas didn't mean harm," Ava continued, addressing Caleb directly. "The portrait might feel like it's replacing something he's not ready to let go." Her words cut through the room's tension, reframing the scratch as a cry for understanding. Amelia's smile faltered, her fingers twitching as if to smooth her necklace again. "I'm sure it was an accident," she said, her voice syrupy but strained. "But we need to ensure this doesn't happen again. Ava, your methods are unorthodox. Perhaps they're confusing him." Caleb's jaw clenched. Amelia's words carried a blame that didn't land on Lucas alone. That afternoon, as Ava guided Lucas through another session at the glass table, Caleb lingered nearby, watching his son place a crimson shard beside a golden one, forming a lopsided star. The boy's focus was intense, his small hands steady for the first time that day. But when Caleb stepped out to take a call, he returned to find Lucas alone, the table dark. Amelia stood in the hallway, her arms crossed, her voice low as she spoke to Lucas. "You need to try harder to fit in," she said, her tone sharp. "This family's important, Lucas. Don't ruin it." Lucas's shoulders hunched, his sketchbook slipping to the floor, revealing another starry bird, its cage now fully broken. Caleb's blood ran cold. Amelia's words echoed David's warning about Lucas's future, but they felt less like concern and more like a demand for conformity. He scooped up the sketchbook, handing it back to Lucas, who clutched it like a shield. "Go draw, buddy," Caleb said softly, his voice steady but his mind racing. Amelia's dismissal of Lucas's pain, her focus on an upcoming gala over his feelings, cracked something in Caleb's trust. He needed to know what was happening in his home. Really happening. That night, as Lucas slept with his sketchbook under his pillow, Caleb made a decision. He contacted a security firm, arranging for hidden cameras with microphones to be installed throughout the penthouse. If Amelia's control and David's whispers were more than overzealous care, he'd find out. The starry bird, its cage shattered, lingered in his thoughts, a symbol of Lucas's quiet rebellion. As he stared at the scarred portrait, its scratch a jagged accusation, Caleb felt a storm brewing, one that would either save his son or tear their fragile family apart. The penthouse, once a sanctuary of sleek luxury, felt like a battlefield to Caleb Hart, its silence heavy with unspoken truce. The scratch portrait of him and Amelia Holt, its jagged scar across her painted face, stood as a stark reminder of Lucas's silent rebellion. His 6-year-old son's broken star drawing and the scattered glass shards from Ava Monroe's art therapy sessions haunted Caleb, each a plea he hadn't answered. Amelia's sharp reprimand to Lucas, to fit in for the sake of their family, echoed in his mind, clashing with Ava's gentle insistence that the boy's actions spoke of grief, not defiance. David Hale's warning about Ava's influence lingered like a shadow, and Caleb's trust in Amelia's intentions was fraying. Determined to uncover the truth, he'd ordered hidden cameras with microphones installed throughout the penthouse, their invisible lenses now watching, listening, waiting. Late that night, Caleb sat in his office, the city's skyline a restless glow beyond the windows. Lucas slept upstairs, his sketchbook tucked under his pillow, the starry bird with its broken cage a fragile beacon of hope. Caleb's laptop flickered to life, the security feed streaming in grainy clarity. He hadn't expected to use it so soon, but the tension in the penthouse, Amelia's clipped demands for reports, her dismissal of Lucas's drawings, pushed him to act. He scrolled through the footage, his heart pounding, until a muffled argument from the living room stopped him cold. Amelia's voice, low and jagged, cut through the speakers. "This boy and that black therapist are ruining our plans," she snapped, her words slicing the air. Caleb's breath caught. He leaned closer, the screen illuminating his clenched jaw. David's voice, calm but laced with steel, responded, "Secure Caleb's merger, Amelia. It's our last shot to save the company. After the wedding, you can deal with them both." Caleb froze, his pulse a drumbeat in his ears. The merger, a tech deal worth billions set to close before the Sarah Hart Art Foundation Gala, was Amelia's endgame. Their engagement, her polished affection, was a transaction, and Lucas, his silent son, was collateral. The footage showed Amelia pacing, her fingers twisting her pearl necklace. "I can't stand it, David," she hissed. "She's turning him against me, filling his head with her sentimental nonsense, and Caleb's falling for it." David's laugh was cold, calculated. "Let her play savior for now. Once the merger's signed, you'll be Mrs. Hart. Then you can send the therapist packing and put the boy in boarding school. He'll learn his place." Caleb's hands trembled, rage and shame colliding. Amelia's prejudice, her disdain for Ava's empathy, was laid bare, and David's plan to exile Lucas cut deeper than any betrayal. He shut the laptop, the room plunging into darkness. His mind raced, replaying every moment he'd trusted Amelia, her smiles, her promises of a perfect family. He'd been blind, chasing a legacy of wealth while Lucas drowned in grief. Stumbling to his desk, Caleb's hand brushed an old score by Sarah, its handwritten notes smudged from years of love. It was a lullaby she'd played for Lucas, its melody a starry sky he'd forgotten. Tears pricked his eyes. He'd spent millions on paintings and therapists, trying to buy back Sarah's presence. But Ava had given Lucas something real, a way to hold on to his mother's light. Caleb's anger hardened into resolve. He wouldn't confront Amelia yet. Her words captured on camera were a weapon, and the gala, where the merger would be finalized, was the perfect stage to wield it. She'd built her empire on deception, but Caleb would let her unravel it herself, in front of the world she so desperately courted. He opened the laptop again, saving the footage to a secure drive, his fingers steady despite the storm in his chest. The next morning, Lucas sat at Ava's glass table, arranging shards into a lopsided star, his small hands careful but focused. Ava guided him, her voice soft as she placed a cobalt piece beside his. "This one's for someone you miss," she said, her silver bracelet glinting as she moved. Lucas nodded, his eyes flicking to the portrait, its scratch a silent accusation. Caleb watched from the doorway, his heart aching. Lucas's star, uneven but bright, was a testament to Ava's care, a care Amelia sought to erase. Amelia entered, her smile tight as she announced preparations for the gala. "Lucas should join us," she said, her tone falsely warm. "It's time he learns to represent the family." Lucas's hand faltered, the shard slipping from his fingers. Ava caught it, placing it gently back on the table. "He's learning to represent himself," she said, her voice calm but firm. Amelia's eyes narrowed, but she turned to Caleb, expecting support. He said nothing, his gaze fixed on Lucas, who clutched his sketchbook, a new starry bird taking shape, its cage now gone. As Amelia left, her heels clicking sharply, Caleb's resolve solidified. The cameras would keep watching, but the gala would be the reckoning. Lucas's drawings, Ava's stars, Sarah's lullaby. They were the truth he'd failed to see. He wouldn't fail again. The penthouse, once a fortress, was now a stage, and the whispers in the dark would soon face the light. The penthouse was a tinderbox, its polished surfaces hiding the sparks of betrayal Caleb Hart had uncovered. The security footage, Amelia Holt's venomous words about Lucas and Ava Monroe, her plan with David Hale to exploit Caleb's merger, played on a loop in his mind. Her hissed declaration, "This boy and that black therapist are ruining our plans," had shattered Caleb's trust, exposing her engagement as a calculated grab for his wealth. His 6-year-old son's starry drawings, their cages broken, were a quiet rebellion against Amelia's control, and Ava's gentle guidance had given Lucas a voice where Caleb had failed. With the Sarah Hart Art Foundation gala looming, Caleb clutched the saved footage on a secure drive, his resolve a blade sharpened for the night ahead. Amelia's empire of deception would crumble, and he'd ensure it happened where her world of investors and media could witness it. The gala filled the penthouse's rooftop garden with a constellation of Manhattan's elite, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes under strings of fairy lights. Lucas stood by Ava's side, his small hands fidgeting with his bow tie, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. Ava knelt beside him, her silver bracelet glinting as she adjusted the tie with a reassuring smile. "You're doing great," she murmured, her voice a steady anchor. Lucas's eyes, usually shadowed, flickered with a hint of trust, his fingers loosening their grip on the book. Caleb watched from across the garden, his microphone clipped discreetly to his lapel, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. He'd chosen this stage, the gala honoring Sarah's memory, to expose Amelia, to reclaim his son's future. Amelia moved through the crowd, her smile a polished mask as she charmed investors, her pearl necklace catching the light with each calculated gesture. She approached Lucas, her voice syrupy. "Come, Lucas, let's greet our guests. It's time to show you're part of this family." Lucas stiffened, his hand tightening on his sketchbook. Ava stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. "He's fine here for now. Let him ease into it." Amelia's eyes narrowed, her smile faltering. She seized Ava's arm, pulling her toward the greenhouse's shadowed entrance, out of the crowd's sight. "We need to talk," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. Caleb, watching from a distance, slipped closer, his hand brushing the microphone switch. Inside the greenhouse, Amelia's voice rose, sharp and unguarded. "Stop acting like his mother. You're just hired help. You don't belong in this family." The words sliced through the air, each syllable a blade of prejudice. Lucas, trailing behind, froze, his eyes wide with shock. His small hands shook, and in a burst of defiance he grabbed a glass of water from a nearby table and flung it at Amelia's dress, the liquid splattering across the silk. "Don't say that to Ava!" he cried, his voice breaking the silence of his mutism, raw and fierce. Amelia gasped, her composure cracking as she stared at the drenched fabric. Caleb stepped from the shadows, flicking on the microphone, his voice steady but thunderous. "Thank you, Amelia, for saying what I've been too blind to see." His words boomed through the garden's speakers, freezing the crowd. "Ava and Lucas are my family. You've made it clear you have no place in it." He held up the secure drive, its contents a silent witness to her betrayal. "Your plans with David, your disdain for my son and Ava, they're over." The guest murmurs grew, phones flashing as they recorded the scene. Amelia's face drained of color, her hands clutching her necklace as security approached, their steps deliberate. David pushed through the crowd, his voice smooth but desperate. "Caleb, let's discuss this privately." But Caleb's gaze was unwavering. "You're done here too," he said, nodding to the guards. As Amelia and David were escorted out, their protests drowned by the crowd's whispers, Lucas clung to Ava's hand, his small frame trembling but resolute. Ava knelt, her voice soft. "You were so brave," she said, her fingers brushing his sketchbook, where a starry bird now flew free. Caleb joined them, his heart pounding with relief and regret. He'd let Amelia's deception linger too long, but Lucas's outburst, his first words in months, ignited a fierce pride. The gala's lights dimmed, the crowd's attention shifting to the next speaker, but Caleb's world narrowed to his son and Ava. The starry sky above mirrored Lucas's drawings, a testament to the love they'd fought to protect. But as they left the greenhouse, Lucas's grip on Ava's hand tightened, his eyes shadowed with a new fear. The victory was theirs, but the cost weighed heavily. His son's fragile trust hung in the balance, and Caleb knew the battle for their family was far from over. The penthouse was a sanctuary reclaimed, its glass walls no longer echoing Amelia Holt's venomous words, but the air still trembled with the aftershocks of her betrayal. Caleb Hart stood on the rooftop, the Manhattan skyline a jagged constellation below, his heart heavy with the memory of the gala. Amelia's hissed declaration, "You don't belong in this family," had been broadcast to a stunned crowd, her prejudice and greed laid bare. Lucas's defiant act, splashing water on her dress, and breaking his silence with a fierce cry had ignited Caleb's resolve to end their engagement. Yet as security escorted Amelia and David Hale away, Lucas's grip on Ava Monroe's hand had tightened, his eyes shadowed with a fear that cut deeper than Caleb's victory. His 6-year-old son, who had found his voice for a moment, now retreated into silence, and Caleb feared the chaos had fractured the fragile trust they'd built. Lucas sat alone in his room, his sketchbook open to a new drawing, a cracked ground splitting Caleb and Ava apart, their figures small beneath a stormy sky. The starry bird, once free in his gala sketch, was gone, replaced by jagged lines that spoke of a boy terrified of losing another family. Caleb's chest ached. He'd protected Lucas from Amelia's cruelty, but he hadn't shielded him from the fear that their new bond might crumble. Ava, sensing the shift, found Caleb in the hallway, her silver bracelet glinting as she clutched a small telescope. "He's scared," she said softly, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "He needs to know this family is real, not another promise that breaks." Caleb nodded, his throat tight. He'd failed Lucas too long. He wouldn't now. The rooftop garden, once the stage for Amelia's downfall, now glowed with a quiet intimacy under the night sky. Ava set the telescope on a tripod, its lens pointed at the stars, and called Lucas to join them. He shuffled forward, his sketchbook clutched like a shield, his eyes fixed on the ground. Ava knelt beside him, her hand gentle as she guided his gaze upward. "Your mom used to tell you about stars, didn't she?" she asked, her voice a soft anchor. Lucas nodded, his fingers tightening on the book. "She said they're people we love, watching over us." Ava smiled, a flicker of her own grief surfacing. "My Eli's up there too. Stars don't fade, Lucas. They shine no matter how far away." She adjusted the telescope, focusing on a bright point in the velvet sky. Lucas peered through, his breath catching as a star gleamed, sharp and eternal. "See that one?" Ava said, touching her bracelet, a gesture Caleb knew tethered her to her lost son. "That's for your mom and Eli. They're still with us, always." Lucas's eyes widened, a spark of wonder breaking through his fear. "Eli has a star, too?" he asked, his voice a soft, clear whisper, the first word since the gala, fragile but resolute. Caleb's heart leapt, the sound a lifeline in the dark. Ava nodded, her eyes glistening. "Every person we love has a star. Families aren't just people standing together. They're stars shining on the same sky." Lucas's fingers loosened on his sketchbook, and he opened it, revealing a new drawing. 3 figures, Caleb, Ava, and himself, under a sky of glowing stars, no cracks beneath them. His pencil moved swiftly, adding a 4th star, smaller but bright, for Eli. Caleb knelt beside him, his hand hovering, then resting lightly on Lucas's shoulder. "That's beautiful, buddy," he said, his voice thick. Lucas looked up, his eyes no longer shadowed, and leaned into Ava, his small frame steady for the first time in days. Caleb watched them, the telescope's lens reflecting a fragment of the starry night. Ava's words, her quiet strength, had reached Lucas where he couldn't, mending the fear that had silenced his son. The gala's chaos, Amelia's words, the flashing cameras, had threatened to break them, but this moment under the stars felt like a promise kept. Social media buzzed with condemnation of Amelia's prejudice, clips of her outbursts spreading like wildfire. But Caleb's world was here, on this rooftop, where Lucas's voice had returned. As they packed up the telescope, Lucas clutched his new drawing, his fingers tracing the stars. Caleb caught Ava's gaze, her smile a quiet acknowledgement of their shared victory. But Lucas's earlier sketch, the cracked ground, lingered in Caleb's mind. Their family was healing, but it was fragile, built on trust that needed nurturing. He vowed to protect it, to build something lasting, not of wealth, but of love. The stars above, unyielding in their light, seemed to guide him toward a new purpose, one that would shine beyond the penthouse's walls. The penthouse, once a cold fortress of glass and ambition, now hummed with warmth, its walls echoing the quiet triumph of a family forged under the stars. Caleb Hart stood in the living room, the memory of the rooftop telescope scene vivid. Lucas's soft voice asking, "Eli has a star too?" and his starry drawing of three figures, free of cracks, binding him, Ava Monroe, and Caleb together. That night had mended Lucas's fear, his 6-year-old heart finding solace in Ava's story of stars as eternal loved ones. Yet Caleb knew their victory over Amelia Holt's betrayal was fragile, a spark that needed kindling to become a lasting flame. The social media storm condemning Amelia's prejudice had faded, but Lucas's newfound trust demanded more. A legacy not of wealth, but of healing. Caleb's vow under the starry sky to build something enduring with Ava burned bright as he envisioned a future where love outshone loss. A year later, the penthouse was transformed, its sterile elegance softened by sketches and books, remnants of Lucas's art therapy with Ava. Caleb had sold a third of his tech empire, funneling the fortune into Eli's Lighthouse, a multicultural art therapy center led by Ava. Named for her late son, the center stood in a renovated Brooklyn warehouse, its walls alive with children's drawings, a testament to healing across divides. Tonight, its first exhibition drew a crowd. Families from every corner of the city, their voices mingling in a chorus of hope. Caleb stood at the entrance, his hand brushing a program listing the center's mission: to help children grieve through creativity. Lucas, clutching his sketchbook, bounced beside him, his eyes bright with a confidence Caleb hadn't seen since Sarah's death. Ava moved through the room, her silver bracelet glinting as she guided a group of children to a massive stained glass mural, its origins in the starry shard Lucas had placed on her light-up table a year ago. The mural, built by dozens of young hands, glowed with thousands of colorful shards, blues, golds, reds, forming Caleb, Ava, and Lucas under a starry sky, their figures woven with light. "This is our story," Ava said, her voice steady but warm, addressing the crowd. "Every piece here holds a memory, a loss, a hope. Together, they shine." Lucas tugged her hand, his smile wide. "I added Mom's star," he said, pointing to a golden shard, his voice clear and unafraid. The crowd murmured, moved by his courage, and Caleb's throat tightened, pride swelling in his chest. The exhibition buzzed with life. Children laughed, parents shared stories of healing, and volunteers hung new sketches on the walls. Caleb caught Ava's eye, her smile a quiet echo of the rooftop night. She'd turned her grief for Eli into a beacon for others, and Lucas, once silenced by loss, now guided younger kids, showing them how to arrange glass shards. "You put the bright ones where it hurts most," he said, his small hands steady, echoing Ava's lessons. Caleb knelt beside him, his heart full. "You're pretty good at this, buddy," he said, ruffling Lucas's hair. Lucas grinned, holding up a new sketch. A starry sky with 4 figures now, Eli's star shining beside Sarah's. The center's impact rippled beyond the night. Families from marginalized communities, once excluded from elite spaces like Amelia's world, found solace here, their children's art dismantling the barriers she championed. News of Amelia's downfall had spread. Her company collapsed under public outrage, her board seats revoked after viral clips of her gala outburst. Caleb felt no joy in her ruin, only relief that her influence could no longer touch Lucas. He'd learned to cook grilled cheese, read bedtime stories, and attend every school event. His empire no longer his master. Ava, too, had found purpose. Her leadership at the center, a testament to love's power to heal. As the exhibition wound down, Caleb, Ava, and Lucas stood before the mural, its light casting a glow across their faces. Lucas opened his sketchbook, revealing a final drawing. The 3 of them, hands linked, under a sky where every star shone for someone loved. "This is us," he said, his voice steady, "and Eli and Mom." Ava's fingers brushed her bracelet, her eyes glistening. "Families don't end," she said softly. "They grow, like stars in a bigger sky." Caleb nodded, his hand resting on Lucas's shoulder, their bond a quiet vow. The penthouse, once a stage for ambition, was now a home, its walls lined with Lucas's sketches and Ava's books. Caleb and Ava, partners in time, worked side by side, their shared vision a legacy of compassion. As they left the exhibition, Lucas's hand in theirs, Caleb looked up at the night sky, its stars a reminder of Sarah and Eli, in the family they'd chosen to build. The mural's light, like their love, would shine on, proving that healing, not wealth, was the truest inheritance. As the stars above the penthouse continue to shine, Caleb, Ava, and Lucas's journey reminds us that family is built on love, not wealth, and that healing begins with seeing each other's light. What did their story spark in you? Share your thoughts about courage, loss, or the families we choose, because your voice matters. Thank you for joining us in this tale of heartbreak and hope. Until we meet again under another starry sky, keep shining.